17 years ago, I sent a series of emails to Nintendo which they were actually kind enough to reply to. Remember the days when you could call a customer service number or send in an email and actually interact with a real, living person? Crazy concept, I know, except that's exactly what Nintendo used to do. So today I thought it'd be fun to go back and look at those emails and see just what Nintendo said in response. Also, at the end of this video, we're going to be looking at an email that I sent to Nintendo just 1 week ago to see how they might deal with it today. Let's jump in with this one that I sent to Nintendo in May of 2006. This one relates to New Super Mario Bros., which had just come out a few days prior, and I had a question for them in regards to when we might see more. So it begins, I just finished beating New Super Mario Bros. 100%, and I crave more. I was wondering if you plan on making another one. P.S. If you don't believe me when I said I beat it completely, then how would I know that the code for Luigi is select a file L+R = Luigi, and that when you spend all of your star coins, the message all star coins spent appears in the bottom left corner of the map screen. So wow, looks like I had some pretty massive sass back then, showing off my gaming skills to this poor person at Nintendo who ended up being kind enough to reply to the email. But really, New Super Mario Bros. Was huge for me. I was so excited for it. It was Mario's first entirely side-scrolling adventure since Mario Land 2 back on the original Game Boy, and just as a huge fan of those 2D Mario games, I was so stoked for it, and obviously, as you can see, just beating it in like 2 sittings was not enough for me. I wanted more, and I think we all know these days just what happened with the New Super Mario Bros. Series. But regardless, let's see how they replied to this back in May of 2006. Hello, and thank you for contacting Nintendo. Congratulations on finishing the New Super Mario Bros. Game. We appreciate hearing about the types of products that you would like to see from us in the future. While there hasn't been an announcement concerning a sequel for the New Super Mario Bros. Game, you never know what the future holds. As the worldwide leader and innovator in the creation of interactive entertainment, and because of our history of pushing the limits of gameplay and design, you can always count on Nintendo offering the most imaginative products. Sincerely, Nintendo of America, Inc. So there you have it, Nintendo actually took the time to reply to this silly 13-14-year-old kid who beat a game and sent in an email about it. And this email came back to me the exact same day that I had sent the previous one, so they were really on the ball back then. It was amazing as a kid to just send in that email and know that someone actually read it and took the time to reply. Reading it now, you can kind of see it's mostly a template with New Super Mario Bros. Added in there, but it still made me feel really good, and knowing that someday there might be more. And again, we all know how that turned out. When I was imagining a New Super Mario Bros. 2, I was kind of imagining one that felt more like the NES Mario 2, maybe incorporate some of those elements, some vegetables and stuff in there, which we still never saw in the New Super Mario Bros. Series. So, maybe I should send in an email about that. But again, as you'll see, I did send in a more recent email, and we'll check that out later on in the video. But moving on, we have another email here, and this one is actually from April 2006. We're taking a little bit of a step back, just about a month, and this one reads, Dear Nintendo, I am a huge fan of Nintendo games, and I prefer your systems and games over Sony's and Xbox's. I'm writing this email because one of the series I liked the most disappeared a long time ago. This series is the Tropics series. The Tropics series was amazing. I don't know why the series would put to a halt. I want to know what fans of the series have to do to convince you to make another Tropics, or if you ever plan to make another game in the series. From Andrew. So yeah, this was an essential email. I had to send to Nintendo the incredibly important question of just what happened to Tropics. For those who don't know, it is a series that was released on the NES in the early 90s, with the last and second one only got one sequel, released in 1994 as one of the final NES games ever made. And growing up, the original Tropics was one of the first video games I ever beat at like the age of 4, and it always stuck with me. That was the game that just gave me my love of adventure, love of challenging games, kind of set me down the path I've been on my whole life, for better or for worse. But of course, I wanted to know, all these years later, 2006, it's amazing to think that at that point it had only been 12 years since the last Tropics game. And here we are now, so add 12 plus 17, like a whole 5 billion years since then, and still no sign of Tropics. So I guess my email didn't help all that much. Also, I love how at the top I say, Sony's and Xbox's games. It's like, Sony is the company, while PlayStation is the console, and yet Xbox is the console, while Microsoft is the company. I don't know what my 13, 14-year-old self was thinking, but moving on, let's see how they replied. Hello, and thank you for contacting Nintendo. You may have heard this already, but at this time we have not announced another Star Tropics game. You never know what the future might hold though, so keep checking our website's news section for the latest information and announcements. Once a game has been officially announced, go to our master game list. Check on the Show Advanced Filtering link to narrow your search based on release date, publisher, number of players, etc. When you bring up your desired listing of games, click on the title of a game to view all the information currently available for it. If the information you seek is not yet available, please keep checking back. When there is new information to share on games or other upcoming products, our website is the best official source. So this one's obviously much more of a template to kind of just, stuck Star Tropics in the top there and then, copy and pasted the rest of it, which is naturally going to happen. I'm sure I was not the first person to ever send in an email asking where this long abandoned series is. This also no doubt would have been around the time when they were being bombarded by things like Mother 3 emails and the like, so yeah, obviously having templates ready makes sense. Interesting though, the Nintendo game list, like the master game list, unfortunately going to that link no longer works, and even trying to look it up using the Wayback Machine I wasn't having much luck. But just cool to think that there would have been at one time maybe a list of like every single game that Nintendo had ever released. I do remember something like that. So either it's just no longer on Nintendo's site at all, or it is currently located at a different link that I have not yet found. Just as News Main is no longer the link to Nintendo's news page. It has since changed, but simple enough to find that. Still though, just thought I'd share this one with you all. Nice to see that even though it's a silly email that I'm sure they just rolled their eyes at, they took the time to send that reply. Last but not least though, in terms of emails that I sent to Nintendo back in the day, this one is probably my favorite just because it has some of the most interesting questions in it, and because Nintendo's reply was clearly not just copy and pasted. So let's have a look. This one sent in June of 2006. It reads, I was really disappointed that all of the Super Mario Advanced 4 e-reader cards didn't come out in CAN/US. I had a few questions regarding the Japanese e-reader cards for Super Mario Advance 4. 1. Would the Japanese Super Mario Advance 4 e-reader cards work on my English version of Super Mario Advance 4? And if so, 2. Are the Japanese Super Mario Advance 4 e-reader cards the same size as Canadian ones? 3. Does Nintendo of Japan have an online store I could buy them off of? So this goes back to me talking about just how much I loved the 2D Mario games, and of course there was that massive gap between Mario Land 2 and New Super Mario Bros., but in between there, released in 2003, was Super Mario Advance 4, and it had e-reader card compatibility where new levels could be scanned in and played, thus making these the first real 2D Super Mario levels since Mario Land 2, but not a full game, as of course New Super Mario Bros. Ended up being. And I was so hyped for this as a kid. Again, just like with New Super Mario Bros., but the e-reader levels almost to an even greater degree. I will never forget getting Mario Advance 4 in October, and the next 2 months that I waited to get my e-reader for Christmas were probably like the longest 2 months of my life. Every day, I was just staring at that World E map in Mario Advance 4, dreaming of all the different levels I could play. And then what happens, but Nintendo never even ends up releasing all of the level cards in North America. We only got about a quarter of them, where in Japan, there were just under 40 levels that they got, where in North America, we got about 12 of them. So I was so disappointed that we didn't end up getting the rest. In North America, they were released as part of 2 card series that you bought as a complete set. So Series 1 and Series 2 were always sold in the same pack. You got the same cards every time. And I'm assuming that should the e-reader have done better, they would have released at least 2 more sets after that containing the remaining level cards, as well as some other items and such that were never released in North America. Where in Japan, things worked a little bit different, where there was 2 series of Mario Advance 4 e-reader cards over there, except rather than being released in series sets that were always the same, they were released in booster packs that you had to buy. They contained random cards, so you might end up with a whole bunch of doubles. You might have to trade with people to get all the different ones, and so they were definitely 2 different systems, and I'm not sure which one was really better. You know, we didn't end up getting them all, but at least it was easy enough to buy the ones that we did get, where in Japan, it sounds like a real hassle trying to collect them. But regardless, we never got them here, and let's see what Nintendo has to say about these questions. Hello! As Nintendo of America deals with products for the US and Canadian markets, we have no information regarding the 4th series and whether it was released in Japan. If it was, it most likely wouldn't be compatible with software released here. I believe that Nintendo of Japan has an online store, but you would have to read Japanese to navigate it, and they wouldn't ship outside of Japan. Well, I've got that last part figured out now anyway. A little bit late, but what I can tell you is that unfortunately, Japanese e-reader cards do not work with a North American copy of the game, and I wanted to play these levels so badly before it was easier to do so with emulators, and of course now, you could have played it on the Wii U Virtual Console. The Mario Advance 4 released on there had all of the e-reader levels included, or you can now play it on the Nintendo Switch Online Expansion Pass, and it's great to see just how widely accessible they are now. But back then, I wanted to play them so badly. I was this close to like importing a Japanese copy of the game, importing a Japanese e-reader, trying to track down the cards, and just imagine how difficult that probably would have been back in 2006. Unfortunately, I never did it, but things ended up working out in the end, and I have now played all the levels and have really enjoyed them. So I definitely was not wrong to be excited for levels, which unfortunately never came, but it is what it is now, I guess. But it's really cool to see this email, which does not come across at all as just a copy and pasted template. With that though, those are the 3 emails that I sent to Nintendo back in 2006, and from what I was able to find in my ancient hotmail.com inbox, that, you know, staying up late talking on MSN Messenger with your Hotmail email address, those were the days. I wasn't able to dig up any other ones. The new Super Mario Bros. One was actually always the one that came to mind, and when I thought to go back and look for it, I was surprised to find these other 2, which I had forgotten I sent, but really happy that they were still archived there. The question is though, just what would happen if you sent an email like this to Nintendo today? And that's exactly what I did exactly 1 week ago from filming this on April 17th, 2023. One thing to note about the emails that we've looked at is that they were actually sent to Nintendo through a web form, which used to be on their website. You'd go there, type up whatever message you wanted, submit that, and then in the near future, you would receive a reply through email. Going and looking now though, it unfortunately seems that Nintendo no longer has such a web form on their website. And looking into it, it seems that it's been about 10 years since people really discussed sending emails and inquiries into Nintendo and expecting a reply. So I guess maybe this isn't something that Nintendo really does much of anymore. Digging a bit more into Nintendo's website, you can find places where you can submit things like support tickets, but that's not really what this web form used to be. It was just a general inquiries thing that you could use to ask any sort of question you wanted, and as you can see, Nintendo was kind enough to respond to. Despite that though, looking at the replies that Nintendo sent me, you can see that they came from nintendo@noa.nintendo.com, and I had read that sometimes instead of using the web form, people would just outright email this address and they would get a reply just as I did. So I thought, just for fun, why not sending an email to that address and seeing if it still works? So let's look at what I typed up. Dear Nintendo, thank you for your time. I'm contacting you today to ask about properties which once belonged to the third-party game developer Sing, but I believe you now own since they filed for bankruptcy in 2010. Characters like Kyle Hyde and Ashley Robbins from games like Hotel Dusk, Last Window, and Another Code. Do you know if Nintendo has any plans to bring them back in the future? Kyle Hyde had a spirit in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, but it would be so cool to see him start an all-new adventure. Please don't let them be forgotten! Thank you again, Andrew. So as you can see, I formatted it like my older emails, just for fun, just for consistency, why not? And I sent this 1 week ago. And looking at those other emails, you can see Nintendo was always really good about replying. Sometimes in a matter of hours they would get back to me, although sometimes a day or 2 could be expected as well. Still, really good response time, really good customer service. So, just what happened to this email that I sent Nintendo 1 week ago? Nothing. Unfortunately, I have not received a reply to this email, inferring that Nintendo probably no longer responds to individual inquiries like this. which is really sad because looking back, you can see just how comfy it was, just how nice it was to feel like you were actually interacting with that company that you loved so much. So there is certainly a loss of that personal touch in the modern age, certainly not just with Nintendo, but all companies in general. I suppose if you really wanted to get Nintendo's attention these days, social media is probably the way to go. It seems to have killed most of the more traditional modes of electronic communication, such as email, and of course even that MSN Messenger we were talking about earlier. But yeah, if you have any questions for Nintendo directly, it looks like email is no longer the way to get in touch with them. However, I will always cherish those times where I was able to get replies back in the day, as that felt really special. So what did you think of that? Please let me know down in the comments below. Did you ever send any emails to Nintendo back in the day and get replies? I would love to hear about it. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope to see you next time for something different. So thanks and see you later.